All right. Good evening, everybody. So let's not sugarcoat it. Things are not going as well as they should be for the team right now. The good news is, I think that tonight is the night where Carolina starts to correct their course. I will get into that as to why during the game. But first, I'm going to get to the plethora of comments that one of my favorite mutuals on X and one of my favorite subscribers, Lackey, left here, because there's a very important question in there. Bus driver in the crease. Yep, we're going to talk about that. Also, how we doing tonight? I think they'll win tonight. I really do. I feel like that this skid that they're in is not going to last forever. I'll get into that though. Lackey also says even though we probably won't see him before 2026, it's pretty encouraging seeing Slavin get consistent practice reps on the extra pair. Yeah, as long as he needs before he gets back, I'm totally cool with. I really am. So I hate that this light makes my teeth look yellow. They're not that yellow. I take pretty good care of them nowadays. I even wear a cage now. Grieves for Columbus after a 36-37 loss in Washington goalie duel game. I am not expecting a high-scoring game, but I'm not expecting a goalie duel. I'm expecting something along the lines of a 3-2 type of score, and I wouldn't be surprised if it takes overtime to do it. I would prefer not to do that, especially against a Metropolitan Division team. Any type of performance better than Sunday would be nice. Yeah, I think they'll be better than they were Sunday. I really do. Burgers tonight. Actually, tonight it's wings tonight. I'm having grilled wings, and I haven't decided if I'm going to do fries or a flatbread for the other part of it because I haven't eaten a meal since 5 o'clock on Sunday evening before I went to skate. I fasted all day yesterday, went and skated again this morning, and fasted all day today. The only thing I've had to eat in that time frame is I had one of those honey stinger waffles this morning. Like it's like that big. It was just enough to, to make sure I didn't pass out and die on the ice this morning. Lackey says if the Jackets win tonight and New Jersey and Philadelphia get at least a point, Carolina would be only 2 points out of last in the Metro. Truly a division of all time. Yeah, dude, for real. I like that. That's why I think that there's going to be a sense of urgency among the team tonight. That's one of the factors. Grayson, what's up, buddy? Because it's the anniversary of the Kane celebration of the 06 team, does that mean another L coming? It seems like they kind of always do it. We've seen it last year. I hope that they've used up all their bad luck. I really do. I think that they're going to have a sense of urgency about the standings. I really do. I don't see any way that they don't. Not after like, Lackey put that scenario out there of multiple bad things that could happen. And we're actually going to look across the league because it's not been relevant in a while to the Canes in the regular season, what the landscape of the entire standings looks like. Now it kind of is. And that ain't good, but we'll talk about it. Grayson also says, especially on Eric Stahl retirement night, they lost. That was a pathetic effort. And still it was better than what we've seen the last few games for the most part. But yeah, that's Cavery. What's up, buddy? Busty legacy game. I'm hoping so. He's going to have to be good tonight. Like I said, I'm not expecting a high scoring game, but I'm not expecting a full on goaltenders duel either. So we'll see. I say we celebrate nothing in the bad juju. Trade board update. No trade board update yet. I'm still doing some research on it. When I start publishing that, I want to be able to quickly edit it as it evolves. Right now, I think the most realistic option, which tonight beating them would help, legitimately it would help. Boone Jenner for a stopgap option, I think is the most realistic thing. As far as getting somebody that has a little bit of term, but not too much, someone who's not very young, but not super old either. Good in the dot, good 200-foot player, can chip in some offense. Think of like a Jordan Stahl type of player that can score more often and get assists more often. That's kind of what Boone Jenner is. He would be good stopgap. He's not my first choice. I do like the player. Ryan O'Reilly would be my other choice. That might be a little bit easier because Nashville's in free fall and they're in the Western Conference. So if you try to make a trade with Columbus, it's still in the division, a division that is tightly contested right now. So prying anybody away would be something. And I'm also going to do a scouting thing on Jenner like I did EP40 at some point in the near future when he's back in the lineup, because I don't think he's back yet. I copied and pasted the lines, but I actually haven't looked at them yet. So I don't think he's back yet, though. But yeah, I would like to end all celebrations until such time as we have something to celebrate, and we all know what that is. There is one thing I'm going to talk about at the end of the show. Don't let me forget. there was someone asked a question of, if you don't follow Tom Ray over on X, I highly recommend it. Him, Katie, and Katie Bartlett, who was on here the other night, and Aaron Manning Wrights, they do a show together called Storm Tracker. They asked for, mailbag type questions, kind of like what Canes Corner does. And one of the questions in there, are the Canes closer or further from winning a Stanley Cup now than they were 12 months ago? I'm going to answer that at the end because it's going to be kind of a lengthy answer on my part. My answer is a little bit nuanced, but the short answer is no, as it stands right now. But I will get to that in a little bit. But we're going to talk about this show. We'll talk about the game first, but Ethan, I'll get to this real quick too. I saw Boo Jenner referred to as a stall replacement down the line. This team has to prepare for that when 11 hangs him up. Yeah, he'd be good for that. He'd still be good enough to be a stopgap second line center right now. And then when Jordo hangs it up, then you can slot him down to 3C, and hopefully you have a long-term solution at 2C by then of some sort, or go and get another stopgap option if you need something. Like, I was really rooting for Stankoven to work out there, but his progress has plateaued, and it was never a drastic climb upward. It was always a steady climb, and then he hit a wall. So it's just kind of where we're at with that. So, all right. Typical don't sue me slide. Pause to look if you wish to do so. All right. So here we go. The Carolina Hurricanes are 17-9-2. That record should be better. I'm not gonna front with you guys. There's no reason that this homestand is going as poorly as it is. I know that there's an illness going through the room. That's why it looks like Jesperi Kotkaniemi is going to be out tonight. Nystrom was out recently because of it, so all those things are definitely possibilities. The Columbus Blue Jackets are 13-10-6. The Hurricanes in their last 10 are 9-5-1. Unacceptable when you've had this many games at home. Ending a 7-game home stretch with this record is not acceptable. They've got to turn it around. I'll get into why I think that they will. The Jackets are 7-7-3 away, so struggling a little bit on the road. Last 10 games, the Hurricanes are 4-5-1, and the Jackets are 3-3-4 in their last 10 games. This is the wait, let me go back here. Excuse me, sorry about that. So this is the first of 4 meetings. Now I want to emphasize something about this tonight, and I would have probably not said this last season, but tonight it's relevant. This game is going to be relatively, or could be relatively consequential. You have the 1 game tonight, and then you play them 3 times in the last 2 weeks of the season. In the event that the standings continue to stay like they are, there is a realistic possibility that Carolina and Columbus are fighting for either the very last playoff spot or fighting for the highest playoff berth they can get so they can have as much home ice advantage as possible. Win this game tonight, and hopefully that's not a factor later, but those 3 games near the end of the season could be incredibly consequential to the Hurricanes making the playoffs or where their standing is at in the playoffs. So just putting that out there. Win tonight because you have no idea how this 2 points might factor in later. Very important game to win. It's more important than it should be. At this point, the Hurricanes should have had at least 23 games, or won 21, 22 games, preferably 23. But things are just kind of in a skid right now. So, big picture here. Goal differential. Carolina is still plus 12 despite the struggles lately. That number will be a lot closer in 2 to 3 games if they continue to play like they've been playing. And, teams with negative goal differentials tend to not be in a good spot in the standings. Columbus only has a negative 9 goal differential with 99 against and 9-4. And the Hurricanes are still maintaining a pretty good pace at goals per game with 3.32 versus Columbus at 2.97. Columbus being at 2.97 tends to bode well for the Hurricanes since they're still hanging out at above 3 goals a game. That's going to drastically drop here soon if they don't start getting better. So goals against per game, Carolina still managing to stay under 3 at 2.89. Goals against per game for the Jackets is 3.38. So that's kind of the magic number tonight. That's what I'm looking for more than anything, is a 3-2 type of win from the Canes here. Maybe they can do better, but I think that the sense of urgency, considering what I discussed right at the opening with how these 2 points could be incredibly consequential later. You don't want it to get to that point. You want to just come out of this skid, start winning, and then you don't have to worry about it more than likely. But these 2 points right here could be incredibly consequential in March. So I think that the team has that sense of urgency probably in their head right now and knows that that's a factor. Power play, 15.3 for Carolina, 18.3 for Columbus. So the power play, even though literally it had to cannibalize everything else the Hurricanes were doing well, it was literally the Thanos meme. What did it cost you? Everything to get the power play fixed. It's been going in the right direction. That still needs to continue improving. I'm hoping that it will be closer to 20% by, say, the end of the calendar year. So that's one thing that they need to continue to build their momentum on, that they got that right. Penalty kill, Carolina still sitting at 79. Power play, 18.3 and 72.2 for the penalty kill for the Blue Jackets. Kind of close there, and the penalty kill wouldn't be under normal circumstances. When Slavin's back, the penalty kill is going to uptick, and I would imagine that it'll be back up to 85% within a month, maybe less. So face-off percentage, Carolina's actually, for all the struggles in the dot, as far as an all situations average, they are still sitting at 49.2. This is a game you could have a really, really good night in the circle and get back above 50. I'm a big proponent of face-offs are not as important as they used to be, but this team needs to improve in every way possible right now. The Jackets are sitting barely above 50 at 50.5. So, all right, so looking at the lines here. So from Walt Ruff, season-long 7-game home stretch, and they absolutely wasted it. I just want to continue to emphasize that. Winning tonight is not necessarily victorious. It's damage control at this point in terms of the homestand. Jesperi Kotkaniemi is not skating. From what I understood, he had an illness. Bussy was, of course, in the starters crease. Looking forward to seeing how he plays tonight. Joel Nyström will draw back in. Jacob Slavin remains working on the extra pair. That is all good news. Nyström has really impressed me. If you saw what I posted the other day, I was saying that in the event that the Hurricanes could take a run at somebody, maybe you could consider Sean Walker being part of that trade because of how well Nyström has played, and he can stay at the NHL level potentially. Not a concrete thing. It was just something I was kind of spitballing out there. And I had some people disagree with me, which was totally fine. I understood their reservations about it. It was just an idea I was kind of putting out there. So, lines: Svechnikov, Aho, Jarvis, Ehlers, Stankov, and Blake, Carrier, Stahl, Martinook, Hall, Jankowski, and Robinson. Normal lines. We'll see how they do. I think that should the struggles continue, it might be time to do a controlled blending of the lines, not what he did the other night, but I understand why Rod did what he did last game, because that effort was just completely flat. You had to really, really shake things up to maybe try and get a spark. In the event that stuff continues to not work out here, maybe you can swap Ehlers and Svechnikov and get some size back on the Stankoven and Blake line. Carrier, Stahl, Martinook, they're doing their job. They're doing fine. Hall, Jankowski, Robinson, third scoring line, fourth line on the chart. Hope that, you at least get a +1 net positive out of them. That's about all you really need out of a line like that. And then for the defensive pairs, Miller and Walker, Gostisbehere and Chatfield, and Nikishin and Nyström. So big thing here, Bussy's workload is slowly starting to increase. We're going to talk about that more when we get to the goaltending section. This is a good night for him to really rope up consecutive starts, because the Hurricanes don't play the Caps, I think, until, is it Thursday or Friday? I will tell you in a second, because I actually meant to look at that. I know they're playing Washington next. I want to say it's Friday, though. No, it's Thursday. Okay, it is Thursday. Either way, chance for Bussy to get some consecutive starts. Do well tonight, and then go up and play against a really good team in Washington. I hate saying that phrase, but they are good right now. I mean, we all know that they exploit the hell out of their really easy regular season schedule, and they go to the playoffs and collapse. So I'd still want to beat them, though, even though I'm not going to be able to be there, because if I was still living there, you know damn good and well I would be there. But as far as the Blue Jackets go, Dave Evansons confirms no changes to the Blue Jackets lines. Jet Greaves will be in. And then for their lines, they have Voronkov, Fantilli, Marchenko, Sillinger, Monahan, Johnson. Now, I take a very strong look at that top six. That's a really good top six, especially Fantilli, Marchenko, and Monahan. So Kent Johnson, I know that they've talked about him having some struggles lately. He's still a good player. Now, where Carolina actually is kind of where there's kind of an even match here. Wood, Coyle, Lundestrom. That's a really good third line, a really good shutdown line. Carrier, Stahl, and Martinook are a little bit better, but you don't have that gigantic gap in your dedicated shutdown line as an advantage that Carolina would normally have. That's a really good line. Charlie Coyle is an excellent two-way player. He's very experienced. Miles Wood is like Jordan Martinook for them, essentially, except I'd say he's a little bit meaner. I actually really like him. I wouldn't have been upset if he had ended up being a Hurricane at one point. Wait, go back. Okay, there we go. So that's the biggest thing to consider with that. The defense tonight is relatively even, considering that Slavin is out. Werenski and Provorov, that top pair right there, it is really, really balanced. Neither one of those guys are known for being absolute defensive stalwarts, but between the two of them, they can defend very, very well. Zach Werenski is one of the best offensive defensemen in the league. I would wager to say he's deserves to be categorized more of a offensively minded two-way defenseman, because he does defend relatively well, and so does Provorov. So Matejchuk and Severson for the second pair. Damon Severson, more of an offensive guy. And then you have Smith and Fabro for the third pair. Dante Fabro is someone I wanted the Hurricanes to potentially go get during the offseason. I really, really like his game. So that third pair is more of a pure shutdown pair. So their defense, while not as balanced as Carolina's, with having someone who's charged with generating the offense and moving the puck, and someone charged with being the safety valve for that guy, Columbus's defense is not really entirely built that way. It's kind of stacked. It's kind of front-loaded. So that's where Carolina could take an advantage with having all three of their pairs being better than Columbus's third pair, and all three of their pairs being on par with Columbus's second pair. All three of Carolina's pairs, I would say, are close to Werenski and Provorov. If Slavin were in here, you would probably have a top pair that's potentially better than that. But watch that defense tonight. It's going to be a problem, especially on transition and especially in Carolina's offensive zone. They will be active, that top pair in particular. Skating speed. So something is very weird to me and seemed kind of uncharacteristic. Carolina has actually not been the faster team as far as NHL edge data for several games now. That is strange. It's not normal. So I'm hoping that if whatever this bug, this flu, or whatever that's going through the room is going around, if it's something like that, it's just going to have to run its course until everybody gets it and builds their immunity, and then it's gone. We've been through this before. We see this every year. So there's actually a pretty significant gap in speed here. Now, on the average, it's 23.21 versus 23.39. Not that big of a difference, it looks like. However, when you look at individual burst speeds, Columbus has 53 to 38 for 22 mile per hour bursts. 20 to 22, Carolina only has 611, whereas Columbus has 739. And you have a really big gap in 18 to 20 mile per hour bursts at 2,701 for Carolina to 3,050 for Columbus. Normally, even when teams are faster than Carolina in some way categorically, Carolina still normally has an edge in the 18 to 20 mile per hour burst, or the 20 to 22 mile per hour burst, or the 22 plus mile per hour burst, at least in isolation on an individual basis. Against this team, on paper right now, they do not have that. So this is one of those games where it's going to be kind of difficult for Carolina to play to their strengths, and I'm going to get into more about that here in a moment. Zone map. This is another thing where these teams are kind of close in a lot of ways. So Carolina has 93 goals to Columbus's 86. And this is 5-on-5, by the way, I believe. Not too big of a gap there in terms of goals, especially when you're talking about one team having one team having a worse record than the other and having a -9 goal differential, that being Columbus. That's still not that big of a difference when you're talking about how close the standings are and how much parity there is in the Metro right now. So that's one thing to consider, like right off the hop, that's only a 7-goal differential between these two teams. High danger, not even close. Well, I won't say not even close, but considering it's should be not be that big of a gap. 50 for Columbus, 39 for Carolina. So this is going to be one of those nights where, as far as the defensive zone goes and the entry denials and all that type of stuff, Carolina really is going to have to play their game and force Columbus to play on their terms in Carolina's end. Mid-range, 36 to 26. Again, not that big of a gap, only 10. Long range, 9 to 7. Carolina normally has a really big edge in terms of volume shooting and how many goals that they have from the point compared to other teams. Not in this particular case. And now looking at the shots on goal, this is where also it's relatively close until you get to long range. Now, to go back here for a moment, long range, 9 goals to 7 goals, favoring Carolina. Long range shots, 235 to 172. Columbus is only 2 goals behind Carolina despite having that much shot volume, or that much less shot volume from the point. Mid-range, Carolina has a slight edge there, 270 to 263. Again, not a big difference, only 7 goals. High danger, 241 to 221 for Carolina. Again, not a big difference. And they're doing this with, ultimately less. They're doing this with more shots on goal, but Columbus is not too far behind in terms of volume shooting and how much that they manage to score on it. So all those things considered there. This, on paper, these teams are actually pretty close, especially when you factor in injuries. Now, granted, Columbus is missing Jenner. That's a big loss for them. They're essentially losing their higher scoring version of Jordan Stahl. So, since he's not there right now, that's where Carolina can take advantage of the depth chart as far as how defensively capable your forwards are, particularly your centers. But this is why I'm expecting a close game. This is another reason why, and that's even before you factor in the goaltending. Now, shots on goal, goals against. Here's another thing to look at. Carolina. Oh, wait, no, I believe that's actually the goaltending stuff. Okay, we'll go back to that. They're in the wrong order. My bad. All right, so goaltending matchup. Brandon Bussi, Jet Greaves. This is kind of relevant for every single game he plays from here until, the foreseeable future, but this is the biggest game of Brandon Bussi's career tonight because I think that this one is going to be significant in determining how much workload they think he can take on, because he can slowly he's building his equity right now to potentially be the starter for this team. And one of the ways he can do that is win a Metropolitan Division game tonight and win an even more important one on Thursday. If he plays well tonight, he goes in on Thursday, I think. So do not let this record fool you. He's still got some work to do, but things do look good. In 9 games played, Brandon Bussi has 8 wins, 1 loss, no overtime losses, a goals against average of 2.21, and a save percentage of .903. When you look at Jet Graves, his numbers are really damn good too. 7 wins, 5 losses, 5 overtime losses, and that's with the team in front of him being a little bit lackluster on the defensive side of things. 2.71 goals against average, 9.07. Now, one thing I want to go back to with the lines real quick, since I said that they kind of are lackluster in the defensive side of things. In their own zone, they struggle a little bit. But when you look at that defense there, particularly Werenski, Provorov, and Severson, that is guys who are really, really good at possessing the puck. They might not have the easiest time getting it away from you, but once they have it, it's hard to take it away from them. They're a very possession-driven team. They're a little bit more calculated and deliberate in a lot of ways than Carolina is, but they're really good at possessing the puck. And part of the reason why is 3 of the 6 guys on that blue line, primarily Werenski, Provorov, and Severson. So where Columbus is going to give Carolina a problem as far as their defense goes is how quickly they can cycle the puck, how quickly they can move it up ice, the transition plays, the stretch passes, or the short passes. Either way, those 3 guys in particular are really good at that. So that's where it's going to be a problem. So one of the best things you can do to help out your goaltender tonight in the case of Carolina is keep the puck away from Columbus and forecheck really, really hard on their defense and try to force them to make mistakes. If you can get matchups there that are favorable, which you should be able to since, the Canes are at home, then, yeah, you definitely want the Stahl line matching up with Voronkov, Fantilli, and Marchenko, but as much as you can, match them up against Werenski and Provorov too, because if you can shut down that top pair, that helps you a whole lot. Let's go back up here. All right, so shots against and goals against. This is a comparison of the goals against for Bussi and Graves. So numbers are a little bit better for Bussi, but he's not been taking on that big of a workload. So when we go back to this here, we look and see that Graves has played 17 games. Bussi's only played 9. So Graves has played almost twice as many games as Brandon Bussi. Let me go back here one more time. Has a half a goal better goals against, or half a goal higher goals against average, and a .907 save, and a better save percentage than Bussi. Then you go back and you look at this, it lines up. almost. It's very close because twice the workload. He's given up a little over twice the goals in every situation minus long range, but that's 1-4, so that's not that big of a difference. But when you're talking about 9-17, like this, the only reason that this is not dead even is because it's the high danger shots. Let's say that it was 10 to 20 and the mid range was 9-18. You're talking about this being almost within a election type of margin of error, how different these two goalies are. That's how close they would be. So how close they are on here, I don't think is truly indicative of how close these two guys are as far as how they're performing right now. So all that taken into consideration, I am expecting a relatively even matchup between the goalies here. I'm not expecting it to be a full-on goaltenders duel. I'm expecting a 3-2 game, as I stated before. Saves and save percentage, we'll look at this here. Again, pretty close. This is, again, like, it's kind of uncanny how close these guys are. They're not separated by much. So overall, 903 to 907. High danger, 886 to 860. That's not a big difference when you're talking about workload that Jet Graves has had that Brandon Bussey has not yet. Mid-range, 8.47 to 8.77. That's on 0.030 off. That's not much, especially, again, counting for workload. Long range, 964 to 965, so basically dead even. So those are all things that are to be considered in regards to how close the goaltending matchup will be. The on-ice matchup as far as 5-on-5, let me go ahead and take this down. The on-ice matchup as far as 5-on-5 is going to be pretty close, but for different reasons. With Carolina, it's going to be close because of them playing their normal game of having a lot of volume shooting and everything like that. With Columbus, it's more so the fact of how quickly and easily they can activate their defense. So that way, when they do have possession of the puck, they hold on to it and they create quality chances by doing so. So those are all things to consider with that. Now, one other thing what was the thing I said I was going to talk about near the end of the show that I was going to talk about extensively? Damn it, I'm trying to remember. I'll go through some of the comments and then I'm sure I'll remember. Lackey, don't let me forget whatever it was. Okay. They're effectively 12-11 since the opening win streak, just not good enough when accounting for injuries. I agree. Raleigh 98, RD play a big role with setting up rush chances and just hadn't quite happened the same way in this homestand. That's one of the reasons why I brought up how good Columbus is, at least on paper, at it, because that's going to be a factor tonight, is how much the defense factors in on creating possession and ultimately creating offense. Like that's going to be a big deal for both these teams tonight. That might be where the game is absolutely won and lost, honestly, is how well can your defense activate, get involved in the play, and generate shots, generate good chances. That if you're looking in isolation, what might be the most important element of this game, that might be it. Cavery says, my trade board after I did some research, my picks for a trade is ROR and Alex Tuck. I'm just saying Jordan Staal at 36 out of 37 should not have more goals than Svetch. I agree. That's one of the reasons why I think Svetch maybe needs to bump down a little bit. Need the D pairs to settle. It's still a bit all over the place. Yeah, especially considering all the rotations in and out. I really think they're going to turn it around tonight. I really do. Flyers Hurricanes weekend back-to-back in a few days could also have similar relevance if Philly keeps pace. Yes, that is true. That is absolutely true. Grayson says, I hope this team does not miss the playoffs, man, after signing Ehlers and Keandre Miller hype. I don't think they will. I really don't. That's why I think that tonight it's like, okay, we got to go. I think that's the message right now. We got to get clicking. We got to get going here. They can't afford to have the homestand in 3 and 4. No, and in my opinion, the homestand is already a disaster. It is, as our president says, a huge disaster. It's huge. It's not good. It's an utter disaster. It's garbage. It's gotta stop here. General Jordan Staal, good evening, sir. Let's see. That 886 high danger save percentage slumped. I saw that. Thank you for reminding me. I should have wrote it down. That 886 high danger save percentage is still looking really nice for Bussey. Yeah, that's one of the best things that you can have, because Carolina doesn't give up many quality chances, but the ones that they do give up, because other teams have to work for them so hard, they give up juicy ones, really damn juicy ones. Bussey does not commit hard on the first shot, but it hasn't hurt us too much yet, as our D is normally in good position for rebounds. And I think that's part of the reason why he's flourishing here so far. I really think that. he's not like Kochekov, especially when he's got, Chihuahua brain and he really overcommits to shit. He's not doing that. So about Tom Ray, Katie, and Aaron Manning thing. Yep. Okay. About the Canes closer or further from a cup. Okay, so here's the weird spot that I'm in with this team right now. And I was actually thinking about this today while I was I got back from the rink, or I was on the way back from the rink this morning, and I started thinking about some of the stuff I was going to do on the show tonight. And one of my mutuals over on X, a guy named Tucker Blankenship. If you don't follow him, he's really cool too. He posts on all kinds of sports, like pro, college, hockey, basketball, baseball, football, you name it. He posts about it. Really good follow. He wrote under their little mailbag ask. It's like, hey, are the Hurricanes further away from a Stanley Cup or closer than they were 12 months ago? I would say that they are currently further from it. To be perfectly honest, I hate saying that because all this could turn around in a moment's notice. Be that getting through whatever this illness is that's running through the room, getting Slavin back, guys just kind of collectively turning it on, all that type of stuff. All those things taken into consideration. I think that if they don't look at the standings today and understand that this game could be consequential in 3 months, I'll say 4 months, then you have the back-to-back with Philadelphia that Lackey was talking about. You're playing the Caps on Thursday. If they can't develop a sense of urgency right now and start stringing some wins together so they can set themselves apart and let everybody else fight for the scraps at the bottom in the division, if they're not going to do it now, when are they going to do it? But granted, yeah, Dylan, you're right. Every team does go through slumps. It's just right now Carolina is going through one at about the most inopportune time because you don't want to play catch up. So that's one of the other things about it. But right now, it's like, so I was thinking about this on the way home, like I was saying. I was thinking about this on the way home. Let me close the chat window so I stop getting distracted for a second. So, because I feel like that this is going to be the most important thing I talk about tonight. There have been 2 times in the Rod Brindamore era I legitimately thought that the Hurricanes were going to win the Stanley Cup. 2. The first one, you're going to laugh at me. You're going to laugh at me very hard. The 2019-2020 team. That team to me felt special. Part of it was because that was Sebastian Aho's best season. Not the 23-24 one, that one. Had that gone to fruition, he would have been a 40-goal scorer, and he was getting a ton. He would have got a ton of Selke votes, I think. I really do. He was definitely, he wouldn't take over a game necessarily, but he could take over a shift, and sometimes you only need to take over one shift to win. So there's that. 2, everything else just kind of seemed like it was falling into place. They had a good trade deadline where they got Trocheck and Shea, and everything just kind of looked like it was lining up. And I felt like that team was poised to make a deep run and go to the finals. I really did. Because I was like, if this team really turns it on, who's going to stand up to them at that point? I really felt like that last 14 games they were going to win, before the season was, canceled and they did the modified bubble thing because of the virus that didn't come from a lab in China. I felt really good about that team. It took me a couple of months to feel that way about that team. But once they did the trade deadline acquisitions and everything else, I was like, all right, Canes are in a good spot. Had that season played out as normal, I think the Hurricanes would have, at minimum, had a very interesting conference finals appearance. If not gone to the finals, if not won. I felt really good about that team. The next time I had that feeling was the 22-23 home opener. And I've talked about this before. It had been a couple of years since I had made it to a game because I didn't want to go when they were doing all the mask wearing stuff because some Redditor would yell at me about not having mine on, and then I would punch him, and then I'd be banned from the building. Well, I just decided to wait until they changed the rules back. If they never did, I was just never going to go back to another game. I'd already decided that, but that aside. that team, I remember I was really excited to go to that game because I hadn't been to one in so long. And I watched them come out of the tunnel. Frederick Anderson came out first, and they're wearing the 25th, mind you. Frederick Anderson came out first. Then Derek Stepan followed him, and, everything. And coincidentally, they were playing Columbus that day. And I texted my dad and I said, this team is special. Like, that was the team I thought was going to do it. That was the team that I won, or that I think won 7 games without Aho and 6 without Slavin. And part of that overlap, there were some games that they won without both of them. I just felt like that they were unstoppable at that time. And then you have the Stadium Series game. You have the sick-ass 25th sweaters, everything. That just felt like this is like the magical year for this to happen. Like, everything's lining up. They didn't have the best trade deadline. That proved to, at the time, that didn't bother me because I'm kind of like, you know what? If it ain't broke, don't fix it. You grab Def with Pull URV, and then you just go from there. Then Svechnikov got hurt. And I was like, this was well after Pacioretty and Kasha were out for the season. And then after that, I was kind of like, well, we're screwed. You can't foresee something like that happening. But then I was like, okay, I wish we'd done a little bit more at the deadline there for the Canes. So I have not felt that way about this team since then. This one right here, as far as roster construction goes, when it's fully healthy, is the best team the Carolina Hurricanes have ever had. The 23-24 team, I hate to say this, and I know I'm going to upset people when I say this. The 23-24 team was the most overrated team the Carolina Hurricanes have ever had. I felt great about Gensel. Kuznetsov was a nice add, but there was just something about it that I felt like wasn't working. I had the unpopular opinion at the time, and people said, no, we need to sign them both. I was like, Pesce and Shea, that pair has run its course. And surely it had. So the thing about this team, what I worry about more than anything now, I use the term run its course for a reason. I'm worried that this particular roster has kind of happened at the wrong time. It's been made at the wrong time, and that maybe the way the Hurricanes execute games is finally getting to the point where it's not working anymore. Everything has a shelf life. Everything runs its course. Do I actually think that that's what's going on to a T? No. I think that they're just in a slump and they'll come out of it. But after a while, slumps, skids, whatever you want to call it, losing streaks, not playing as well as you could, especially for an extended period of time, because the Hurricanes have been nowhere near what they're capable of for the first 2 months of this season. That right there is what has me a little bit worried, is I feel like, the formula maybe, and I'm not making this as a particular indictment on the system or a particular indictment on any of the players or anything like that, but has the formula hit stagnation? That's something I'm a little bit worried about. But here's the weird thing about it. That's where it puts me with this team. This team right here, when I look at it, and this is the only time I've been able to say this during the entire Brendan Moore era as well. This team right here, when I look at it, is a team I look at and I roll my eyes and say, it's over after every loss, quietly to myself. I don't really advertise it that way, but I get frustrated with them more so than I have teams or rosters that they've had in the past. But I also look at this team and know that I would go start planning the parade if they acquired Robert Thomas. Like, that's how I feel about this team. It just needs that one. It's like, back in the day, and this is appropriate since it's December. Back in the day, when you had Christmas lights, if one bulb went out, the whole thing went out. That's what I feel like the Canes are right now. They're old Christmas lights that you had to have every single bulb working or the whole damn thing didn't work. I think that they just need to change whatever bulb is burned out. And then Christmas is back on. That's what I think is going on. And the only reason I could think of that analogy is because on Thanksgiving, me and my girlfriend watched National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Hilarious movie. If you've never seen it, I highly recommend it. But that was my whole monologue about that. And those of you who were here the other night when I talked about Brandon Bussey being Flex Seal, that's what he's got to do again tonight too. I will now reopen the comment window and address the rest of you. And pretty soon I'm going to have to get off of here and I have to eat. I have not eaten in 2 days now, literally, and I'm hungry. If you were Tulski, what players are you going after this trade deadline? We'll talk about that more later. That's an extensive topic. That will probably eventually get its own stream, and I wouldn't be surprised if I don't do a little bit of talking about it over the course of the next couple of days. I think I will, but I mean, we talked about a bunch already. Ryan O'Reilly, Jenner's the most realistic option, but even then, that's going to be difficult because he's in the division. Ryan O'Reilly be another good stopgap option because he's got more of his career behind him than ahead of him. So if he wants to win another cup, Carolina would be a good place where he could potentially do that, and he's got that experience from where he won the cup and won a Conn Smythe with St. Louis. So there's that. Right now, that's the two at the top of my list because as much as I want Robert Thomas, even if Carolina makes a monumental offer to get him, he'd still have to waive his no trade clause. So I don't know if he'd be willing to do that. That's the biggest factor there at this point. Carolina offering up the assets to get him, I think, is there. Tage, I'm not totally out on, but it's just he's not near the top of my list anymore. I'm a Robert Thomas guy. That's one thing me and Matthew P can argue about all day. So we are going through a slump. Each team doesn't. We'll do it. I agree, but it's not a good time. Not with the standings being like this, because before you know it, you're 8 points out of a playoff spot and barely getting in, if not getting in at all. Then you use up all your gas going. And that's one thing we have to remember is in the 18-19 season when they made the playoffs, like they secured their spot in game 81 and then knocked off the defending Stanley Cup champions. Hey, Washington, just so you know, I didn't forget about that. That team was a little bit younger, especially if you're talking about all the same pieces who are here now that were there then. So that's another thing to consider. That's one thing with the whole war of attrition factor and everything like that. Carolina, I think it won't be like this forever, but I could see it as guys like Jordo age out and Martin gets older and, he's going to keep playing and everything like that. It gets to a point where like Carolina's ability to win the war of attrition through speed is not going to be as possible or as likely as it has been in past playoff series. Now, granted, they've got a good prospect pool. They've got a great prospect pool, actually, and there will be that infusion of youth. And with that, you'll still have, the ability to do things like that. This team needs to get some size on it, though, to make that happen. And another reason for that is one thing I'm going to look at extensively at some point in the near future. I want to see what the hit differential has been in the regular season and the playoffs for the last, I'll count this season as well, because the Hurricanes possess the puck more most of the time than any team they play against. The consequence of that is you're going to get hit more often. And the phrase, take a hit, make a play. So that's something to consider with that. Between that, the man-on-man defense, there's a possibility that, fatigue factor does set in. So I'm wondering if that maybe has a role in the playoffs, is that you've been taking those hits all season. Now, inversely, with how much Carolina shoots the puck, teams that sell out and block shots, that wears them out too. That's part of what happened to Washington in the playoffs last season. They had to block so many shots from Carolina, that takes its toll on you. It really does. So maybe that's another factor with it. So Raleigh 98 says, I still feel better about the season so far than that season where Ronta and Martin were only goalies at one point. Oh, God. This doesn't have a proof number on it, but still I'm going to do this. Yeah, that was a scary time. Bobby Marshall, what's up, buddy? Wish we could settle in our line combinations so they develop some chemistry. He's left them alone for the most part. The top six has been relatively unchanged other than Ehlers and Svechnikov swapping. But now that Ehlers knows the system a little bit better, I think it's time to swap. And I know people will talk about how many chances and how good the expected goals for percentage is for the current second line with Ehlers, Stankoven, and Blake. It's not scoring enough, though, and it's a results business, as Trip Tracy says. So I think that it might be time to mix that up if they lose tonight or if they have a really flat start. And that's one of the other things that's been really uncharacteristic about the Canes. It's been taking them a little bit to get going. They're a team that's built to play with the lead, and which is also to say they're built to not play from behind. If you don't have the lead, you're playing from behind. So, and you need to treat 0-0 games like, hey, need to get this goal, get the momentum all that type of stuff. And one of the ways that they do that is having, starting the game on time, and they haven't been doing that lately. So I think that this is a very good opportunity for them to right that trend as well. So if there's 4 things I'm looking for tonight, normally it's only 3, but the team sucks right now. They're not playing well. So here's 4. 1, keep the power play going in the right direction. 2, get your game back 5-on-5. If that means you got to dump the puck in a little bit more often than you have been, because it looks like to me that they're dumping they're not dumping the puck in as much as they used to. They're getting a lot more clean entries. So get back on that game, because the forechecking not even been that good lately. And that's what makes me worried, is because that's the bread and butter of this team, is the other team in their own zone, and keep pressuring them, making them cough up the puck and forcing turnovers and everything. They've not been doing that as much lately, at least not full 60 minutes efforts, which leads me to the third thing: play a full 60-minute effort. Seriously. Not seen a full 60-minute effort this entire time. And number 4, I understand you don't have Slavin, makes things difficult. But the best teams can win without their best players. And this is one of those times where they just really need to step into it and get it done. So this game tonight it's not a must win, but if they want to get back on track before things get worse, this is the one to do it. Before you have to go on the road and play the team that's at the top of the division that you have 2 games in hand on currently. You win one of them tonight, you're within a point. See, that's why this week is so important. Win tonight in regulation. Go to Washington on Thursday, win in regulation. You're in first, depending on what Washington does between now and then. So all that considered. So yeah, just full 60-minute game. That's the biggest thing I want tonight. And if that means they don't score, if they go 0 for 4 on the power play again, I that's a small sacrifice just to get them playing well 5-on-5, because 5-on-5 is, the only way you could potentially play an entire hockey game. So it's the most important thing it's the most important situation to have your ducks in a row, and they ain't got that going right now. So that's what's got to get fixed. Caleb says best team on paper, but it really seems like something is off with the forward group, and I can't really put my finger on it. Yeah, it's like between the face-off losses, the lack of forechecking, and just generally they're just not the same right now. The 200-foot play that they normally have, where that's one of the problems that with the forwards, is the forwards are normally really good at back checking and getting back through the neutral zone and everything like that. And when they do that effectively, that gives the defense more confidence to step up at the blue line and knock it off somebody's stick, doing the zone entry denial thing. Because, it's like, blue line's here, back checkers, defenseman, pinch right here, close them off. That's that. It's literally it's like a pincer maneuver for hockey players, the whole zone entry denial thing. But the thing is, when you're a defenseman and you're looking at that and you don't see the forwards getting back enough, makes you a little bit more reluctant to gap up. So that's something else that's got to get fixed if you want to look at another, issue in isolation that they're having, because that's not been nearly as good. Caleb also says, hopefully the post Jordan era will see KK slide into the stall role and let Serrato, Fuss, Ryabkin, etc. battle it out for 4C until they're ready for a larger role. But that's a conversation for another day. So Fuss is back to playing wing in Chicago, and because of that, he's doing well again, so I don't think it'll be him. I'm surprised Jesperi Kotkaniemi has not been traded yet. I mean, I think the contract and the 10-team no trade clauses are also holdups with that. Chance, I'll get to that. But yeah, so all that to consider. I would say that I don't think KK is going to be here. I really don't. I mean, I think it would be great to build another, keep him in that role for a third scoring line, but I don't know if Rod is ever going to trust him to the extent that he would need to fill Jordan Stahl's role. But again, like you said, conversation for another day, because that is an extensive conversation. And for all the heat that people have given Jordan Stahl at times, you are going to miss him when he's gone. It's going to be a noticeable difference. Now, granted, players like him are kind of going extinct anyway, but as far as when you're looking at the Carolina Hurricanes, you will miss him when he's gone. I can promise you that. It might take you a minute, but you will miss him when he's gone. Wait, sorry, Chance. I didn't mean to skip over that one. Chance says, hi, just wanted to check in and see how everyone's doing. I think we'd be a lot better trading Sean Walker for Nikita Zadorov. Just a thought. No. If Carolina's moving Walker out, they better get someone even better than Nikita Zadorov. And besides, we've already got a better version of Nikita Zadorov, like a way better one. Chance says, I thought KK was going to be in the Rantanen trade when the news first broke. Yeah, it was initially reported as KK being in the trade, and I was like, I went from like, oh, holy shit, we got Rantanen, great. I mean, I definitely don't feel that way about it now. But it was also kind of like, wait, if KK's gone, that means our top three centers are Aho, Jordo, and Drury. Oh, shit, that's not going to work. So I was hoping if that had happened, that maybe they were acquiring a center from somewhere. But that's not what went down. But I've gotten to where I'm not like as pissed off about that situation. But me personally, if my wife told me to take a $16 million pay cut because she wanted to live somewhere else, she's gone. That's just me. Call me old-fashioned. Caleb says he's going to leave behind giant shoes to fill. Yeah, he is. And in addition to that, that's going to be around the time that the captaincy is handed over to somebody else. I'm still saying that it should be Aho. And that's someone else who I feel like people have been giving way too much heat to lately. And I think that part of the reason that that's happening is because, yeah, he's not playing 100% of what he's capable of. And yeah, he's got another gear. But I think a lot of people look at him and expect him to be McKinnon, McDavid, et cetera, et cetera. No. He's not that player, and he should not be expected to be that player. It's just, and then when they talk about, oh, we'll go get a 1C and make him the 2C. Okay, cool. How many centers in the league are better than Aho? Like, if they're all playing the best game of their lives on the same day, there's maybe 8 or 10 that are legitimately better than Aho. Day in and day out. And none of them are on the market. So there's that. And he still got 26 points in 28 games. And he tends to do that with the way that he progresses through a point per game season, is where he'll be behind for a couple of games as far as having a point per game, then he'll be ahead for a couple of games. You know, like, for example, he goes out tonight and has 2 points, has one in the next one, and then he's right back on track to be in point per game. You can't ask for much more than, or you can ask for more out of Aho, but I think that the expectations around him are realistic or not realistic, and people are kind of starting to concentrate their frustrations on him. And I don't think that's fair. I'm not saying don't point out when he fucks up. I'm not saying don't point out when he makes mistakes. Don't point out when he's not playing as well as he could be. That's totally fine. But, you know, if you take Sebastian Aho out of the equation, and I'll throw Justin Williams and Rod Brindamore into that as well, in addition to, you know, Tom Dundon buying the team and everything, if you take them out of the equation, the Hurricanes might be in Houston or Quebec City. So I think that people need to temper that a little bit with the shit talking of Aho. Like, because honestly, it's kind of starting to piss me off. I mean, the fact that I'm hungry right now doesn't help because I'm hungry. But yeah, it's people are expecting him to be a player he is not. He never will be, never was, and never should have expected to be. And the thing that has me really thinking about this is we've seen this before already. Eric Stahl and Cam Ward. And I was guilty of that too, especially when it came to Eric Stahl. Caught a lot of blame for a lot of stuff that wasn't their fault. Cam Ward did not have a good team in front of him. Eric Stahl did not have a good team built around him, because Rutherford couldn't understand the concept of, you cannot milk this team anymore. Let's sell. And then Francis inherited a dumpster fire and chose to put it out with a super soaker, which, you know, never entirely got done until Dundon, Rod, etc. came around with the bucket of water and the fire hose to get it done. So that's one of those things where I'm like, I wish people would lay off of Aho a little bit. Like, it doesn't make any, like, I kind of understand getting pissed off at KK and being tired of him. I kind of get that. But Aho, no. It's absolutely ridiculous, some of the stuff that people are saying about him, when this franchise literally might not be in Raleigh if it wasn't for him. So, yeah, do you want more out of him? Yeah. But stop talking about him like he sucks, because he doesn't. So, on that note, I'm going to go start warming up my food and get ready to watch the pregame show. The real pregame show. Everybody, thank you very much for joining me. I have every intention of doing damage report after this game. I will post on X if I'm going to. I appreciate you joining me. Thank you very much for all the support. I'm going to go eat. Y'all have a good night. I will see you soon.